Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Talking Yourself Off the Ledge. Today's guest is Doug, and I don't really know your story. I know Tim does, so this is definitely going to be a treat for me. So yeah, we're glad to have you.
Absolutely. I couldn't be happier to be here. My name is Doug. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's May 1st, 2004. I grew up in Southbury, Connecticut. Super small town. I have a older brother who's 2.5 years older than me, and a sister that's 5 years older than me. Two of the best parents any kids could ever ask for. My parents have been together since they were 13 and 15. I have like your typical small town childhood. I never really got into a ton of trouble. I was always what I thought was a good kid. I never I wasn't like robbing and stealing from people at a young age, at least. I feel like, the big thing for me is like my isms started at a young age. I can remember, I played a lot of baseball growing up, and, being, in like little league, and always practice would end. And I can always remember being mad. I've never been able to do anything in moderation. Everything that I've always done is always to excess. So things would end and I would just be like, well, no, I want more.
I wanted more. Yeah.
I've always wanted more of anything I've ever done. If it makes me feel good, I just need to do it all day long. And it's followed me into my entire life. Like whether it's, I surf, I play golf, I play racquetball, I do all these things, and I'm the person that like, I'll show up early and I want to be there the entire time. And like, even after people are like on their way out, I'm like, oh, one more game. Like I said, for me, it's always been, everything has to be in excess. I got sober when I was 19. So, my story was, everything was, it happened at such a young age. I can remember being, 13 years old and drinking in the woods with some friends, and, having a brother that was 2.5 years older than me. Like everything he did, which I'm, best friends with my brother. But everything he did, I was always there. You know what I mean? Like I never, I also, I have this thing where like, growing up, I just never felt like I fit in, like I always had friends and I had, people that I hung out with, but I never, being that my brother, was 2.5 years older than me, I always hung out with him and his friends. I never had that like full on connection. Like, not that I didn't belong. My brother, he always made me feel like I was, very included in everything. And even if he didn't want me there, I never knew it. We've, for the most part done everything together our entire lives. And, it was very, he was very inclusive. So clearly when he's, he starts drinking, if he's, 15, 16 years old and I'm 13 years old, I got started with everything at such a young age. And, my progression was just, it was, pedal to the metal. I would say, 13, 14 years old, I'm, stealing cigarettes from my parents and, drinking on the weekends. I feel like everything for me, it was always on the weekends. It was always, Friday night, Saturday night, we would go to a field and, somebody would get a keg and you'd just drink yourself until you were throwing up. And then, you'd get home and I feel like my parents never, whether they didn't know it or they were, not that they were hands off by any means, but like they kind of just let us, do our thing. But, I'd say, 14, started smoking weed and, 15, by the time I got to high school, it was starting to become, more of an issue where, as I like everything and more and more and more, my progression was, it went from smoking weed and drinking to, we kind of got into prescription pills when I was probably like 15. We were doing, Percocet, Vicodin, things of that nature. It was always like whatever anybody's friend can, find in a medicine cabinet. And, then you drink with that. And
did you find it's because all that sounds so familiar to me? Like that's almost my exact.
It reminds me of your story.
Like three siblings, three of us, both parents there, both parents loving. Like we didn't have a long leash like that, but it all sounds very, very similar. Was it, did you ever get like competitive with it? Like, oh, you're drinking that much, I'm going to drink more. You're doing that and I'm going to do more. I'm curious if it was ever like that for you.
I mean, I feel like, as much as I wanted to, being as I was always, I was so young, and I was, like a smaller kid. So if I drank like over 4 or 5 years, I was shit house. Like, I could never, like, I would always like get a 6-pack and try and drink the whole thing. And it was like, that was my goal. But, by the time I would get to the 6th one, like I knew I was going to be passed out. Like I never, like my tolerance for drinking was always very low. And as much as I did love to drink, drugs for me was always like, that was, once I found drugs, drinking always just, kind of went on the back burner. Cause that for me, it was like that feeling that I said early on where, never really feeling like I fit in, like I had these true friends. One of my best friends growing up, I've known her since I was 5. We've always been, super good friends. Even today we are, but like, she wasn't doing the kind of things I was doing. So like, and I knew that, so I would, I kind of distanced myself when I was, taking prescription pills and stuff. I hid it from everyone because I didn't want anyone to know that I was a drug addict at, 15, 16 years old. But I wasn't like strung out at 15 or 16.
You probably didn't really know. You didn't identify yourself as that. You were just like having a good time, hanging out with some friends, Absolutely. Partying, like yep. You're accepted. And because it was the same thing for me. Like I just wanted to fit in with people. Yep. I kind of wanted to be cool and fit in. And like, so I get that. It's like these people want to hang out with me and do drugs with me and cool. Like that's about as deep as it goes at that age. Mm-hmm. Like you're not like, I wonder what I'm going to feel like tomorrow if I don't have this. I wonder what, what the rest of my life will be if I continue on this path. Like that just doesn't, it doesn't click like that.
Not at all. And I just feel like, like that, like once I, really started to like, do drugs more, cause it was Percocet, Vicodin, Xanax, and you drink with Xanax, and that's it's an instant blackout for sure. Yep. Like you're not going to remember anything. And I can always remember, those nights we made sure that we didn't go home. It was, we would stay at a friend's house, and we always had this thing.
A story. We're all going to stay at the other person's house.
Absolutely. Or we'd go camp out in the woods, and you just sit around a campfire and just get hammered. But like the thing, I don't know if this was how it was when you were younger, but if whoever fell asleep first, you'd wake up and you'd have things drawn all over your face. So it was like,
it's a party foul
for sure. So I mean, and it was, very, very, vulgar things on your face. And that was always like you'd come to in the morning and you're like, oh fuck it. Can I swear on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you'd run to the mirror and you're like, oh shit, do I have a dick on my forehead? Because it's going to happen. Like that's, that was like the big thing, and they're all over you. But even that, like, I never, even though like I was, starting to get addicted, I was always so naive about it. Like I never, like my idea of a drug addict was like a Skid Row bum in New York City. Like, if you ever, like drove past and you'd see people panhandling for money, like I just assumed those were all drug addicts, and they are.
I know the same thing for me. I remember like my parents sitting us down and being like, if anybody offers you drugs, like say no, and the whole dare thing. I remember picturing myself being offered drugs by somebody and saying no, and that person was like the people that my parents would lock the doors that were around like downtown in the city, and like panhandling and trying to wash your windows.
It was
like,
never going to be a friend.
No, it wouldn't be your friend that you hang out with on the weekends. That was like, dude, try these. They make you feel great. Mm-hmm. Like that was not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's, the progression for me, cause it was always more and more and more. So, the more I start, doing more prescription drugs, that was back when Oxycontin was Oxycontin. There's, I feel like it's not really what it is anymore, but, when I started doing Oxycontin, they had the 160 milligram pills, which we used to call them footballs because they were massive. And I was like, I can remember being 15 years old and like
giving me chills. I remember that.
Oh, for sure.
And
we were getting them for like, $20 or $30 a pill because it's back before anyone really knew that, that they were.
How that was even on the market blows my mind.
It's insane.
That could kill somebody.
It really could. It's wild. But like, I can remember being, up because we always, my brother, like I said, 2.5 years older, we always did everything in his room. My room was on the first floor. It was on the second floor. And I can remember being like 15 years old and just sniffing oxys up in his room. And, but just really never feeling like I never had that feeling like I'm going to get strung out. I know I'm going to get strung out. And before I knew it, like it had already grabbed me. There was no, like, I can remember, doing it for, a month or two, and like, the middle of the week being like, my back's really like I'm really sore, and it's like, I'm starting to withdraw off of Oxycontin and I don't even know it, and then there's that one night where I'm at a field party and somebody's like, it's just like Oxycontin. It's just a little bit better. And I'm like, all right,
cheaper.
Well, at this point, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm like a garbage can. I'll try anything. But I always, in the back of my head, I always said, I'll never do cocaine and I'll never do heroin. Like that was like the two drugs I will not do. If I do those, I have a problem.
Cause that almost makes you think, that is that person.
Yes.
That is that,
yep.
That's the person that I would never say yes to.
Yep.
And nobody starts with heroin or cocaine.
No.
No. You've already grabbed hold, it's already taken hold. Mm-hmm. And at that point you're kind of just like, screw it. Like,
I don't know. I feel like I kind of started.
No, you didn't wake up one morning and then all of a sudden dabble in hard drugs.
No, I mean that to me was like I never thought, like growing up, it was, like you'd see it on TV or movies or whatever. Like heroin to me was like, it was dirty. It was gross. It was, like track marks all over your arms. It was something that it was never even a thought in my mind because I was never going to do it.
Until you were addicted to opioids.
I mean, at that point, like I was so, I never like, you didn't really know what an opioid was. Mm-hmm. It was, we were kids. And so sure enough, in the field, it's like Oxycontin, but it's a little bit better. Do it. And it's like, I will never forget that moment as long as I live. Like in the back seat of my brother's car with one of his best friends, which we had been friends with, since we were kids. And it was like, but I can remember the exact moment that he's like, you just got to do a very small amount of it because it's a little bit stronger than Oxycontin. And sure enough, it was like, what came over my body was like, okay, I don't ever need to do any other drug. This is it. This is all I need to do for the rest of my life. And the next day, someone's like, yeah, dude, that was heroin. And I'm like, I can remember I was at work and I was so fucking mad. Like, I can't believe, I did heroin. I can't believe he tricked me into doing heroin. Like, it's ridiculous. But, and then it was like, I had this epiphany, like I'm never doing that ever again. Never going to do it again. And a couple days later, I can remember being like, well,
I'm okay.
I mean, I didn't die.
Right. I'm okay.
I did not overdose.
Everything that I was taught isn't right. Look, I'm okay.
Yep.
I didn't die. I didn't lose everything I have. Like, look.
Yep. And there was about, at that time, there was probably like, 10 or 15 of us that, we were all kind of doing the same things. Like we would go to the parties with everyone, the keg parties, everyone's drinking. And then it was like the subset of other people, and you'd see them moving around the party, and everyone would like go to someone's car and start sniffing something, start, doing whatever. It's like, my parents, who I know my mom and dad are going to watch and listen to this. And they're, like I said, they are two of the most amazing people on this planet. But like, they had a house up in New Hampshire, and they would, they'd go away in the winter for weekends, and like we would have the most kick-ass parties at my parents' house. And like we always had this rule, because it was the winter time, because my dad and mom used to ride snowmobiles. My dad still does, but like when you came to a party at our house, you had to take your shoes off, because the snow's going to come in the mud. It's going to be all over the fucking carpet. My mom's going to be, they're going to be pissed.
The same thing. My parents had a house down in Myrtle Beach.
Yep.
And I would throw huge party, and I'd be at the door, shoes off.
Like we would, and like, you get 30, 40 people in the house, and there'd be fucking shoes all over the floor. It was hilarious.
I know.
My brother at one point had a party that there was so many people at the house that the back deck literally detached off the house. There was so many people on it, and it was in the summertime, and I was with my parents and on summer vacation down in Long Beach Island that we've been going to since we were kids. And like I remember getting the call from my brother, like, dude, the fucking deck fell off the house. But like the next day, he got everyone to lift the deck back up, put cinder blocks under it. My parents never knew about it. It was like, I mean, they
now they do.
Well, for sure. I mean, they obviously know about it now. But
wow,
you know, and it's just, you know, just the craziest things. And I mean, that was back before it got real bad. But
one thing I'm thinking is when you said, like, you know, you hang out with a party in a group and there's always that, like, you know, that group that's like going into this room together and then they're going to the car together. I always found that group got smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yep.
Like in the beginning, it's like, yeah, there's a group of us and we're all like drinking and smoking and it's everybody. And then it's like, yeah, there's pills and that group's a little smaller.
Yep.
And they're going around. Then it's like, there's coke in there too and it's a little smaller. And then there's heroin. It's just me in a corner with no one around and no money and nothing.
Yep.
Like it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
It's, you know, I mean, like I said, there was, you know, 10 to 15 of us, and, you know, that got down to like, you know, 8 to 12. And then there was like 5 to 6. And then there was like, you know, 3, 4, 5 of us. And we were the ones that, you know, like, I mean, the first time that I ever injected, I was, I think either 16 or 17, somewhere in there. And because like that for me, like I've always had these limits on, all right, if I do this, but I'm not doing that. So sniffing heroin, fine. You know what, whatever. I'm doing it, but I'm never going to inject. It's just not going to happen. You know, at that point, my brother had already started to inject, and a couple other of our friends did. And like, whenever they do it, I was like, I would make sure that I left the room. And then there was just, you know, that one fateful day where, you know, I just, as much as I want to say that I was convinced to do it, I mean, of course I wanted to see what it felt like, and that was that moment that, like, the first time that I tried heroin, it was like, oh my God, like, I feel like I have a million friends, everyone loves me, like that inner peace feeling. Injecting was like, okay, well now this is it. Like, I'm never going to sniff ever again. That's just a waste of drugs.
All you think is like, I've been wasting money.
So much money, so much drugs. Yeah, it's insane that, like, you know, that feeling. I mean, like, it was on summer vacation. It must have been summer vacation going into senior year of high school. And it was like,
that's young to be that hardcore. Like, and that's really young.
And I'm a late birthday. So, you know, I was, you know, September birthday. So, you know, like I was like the last kid in my school to get, you know, like everyone had their license and I'm still, you know, like, and what's funny is I turned 18 so late. So like all my friends, when they turn 18, you go to strip clubs. That's just what you do. But by the time I turned 18, nobody wanted to go. And it was like, oh, what the fuck? Like, really? So, you know, that, and so, you know, like I was saying, you know, once I started injecting, it was at that time, it was really starting to become, you know, an everyday thing. At that point, I was completely strung out and really, you know, I didn't really, I mean, of course I knew it, but like I didn't know what a heroin withdrawal was. You know, I mean, I just like, I didn't feel great. I get the sniffles, you know, and it's like, you know, like I've said 100 times in this already, is that like my progression was so fast that from, you know, by the time I started injecting, I mean, we were, and, you know, lived in Southbury, so we're going to Waterbury every day. So it's like, you know, we got to a point where, you know, like, I mean, if I had a job, it was like, you know, I was working at like Staples, and I you know, was working at a deli for a while until they finally figured out what I was doing and fired me. And I worked at Staples for a while, and like, you know, that, I think because I mean, I had to wear long sleeves. So it's this, I mean, because I'm, you know, I have track marks all over my arms. So I'm, you know, 17 years old working at Staples. And like, I can remember, you know, one of the managers is like, it's 100 degrees out. Why the fuck do you have long sleeves? I was like, oh, you know, I run cold, or I don't, you know, like I'm, you know, 140 pounds, you know, I'm like skin and bone. And, you know, and I ended up getting fired from that job. And then I went to work for a hotel, and, you know, my brother and I actually ended up getting a connection at the hotel, you know, that like, I think the dude thought that we were selling heroin. We weren't selling it. We were the consumers. So we were getting like, you know, pretty good amounts. You know, we'd get like, you know, 5 to 10 bundles at a time. But like, you know, payday would come around, and, you know, like I can remember, you know, at this time, you know, it was getting really bad, and, you know, my parents were, you know, really trying to intervene to, you know, to help us. And, you know, like, they were adamant that we're going to take your paychecks. When you get paid, we're taking your paychecks. So like, you know, we would always be like, no, we didn't get paid this week, or like they held it for whatever reason. And because we needed to pay the guy back, you know, like when you're taking that much drugs from someone, the dude wants his money. So it was like, you know, we gotta, you know,
he gets it before mom and dad do.
Oh yeah,
you've been fronted hundreds and hundreds of dollars of drugs from somebody,
thousands of dollars sometimes, and it was like, you know, and we come home and you know, because like I said, my brother and I, we've always done everything together, and we're always trying to figure out, all right, like, what's the story going to be of why we're not giving mom and dad money this time? And like, just the sheer disappointment, like in my parents. And my mom is, you know, because my mom, she worries a lot. It's just how she is. Sorry, mom. But
my mom
like,
too.
She's just, and like,
it's probably us. It's probably not them.
Oh no,
it's probably us
for sure. I mean, we just put them through the absolute ringer. You know, and like it's, you know, she would just always worry, you know, she wouldn't sleep at night because if we were home, she would sleep, you know, but that would like whenever we would leave the house, it was, I mean, I think she always knew what we were doing, but I think it was just such, I don't want to say denial, but hoping that it was just going to fix itself. And
my mom said the best night sleep she got was when I was finally in prison.
Yeah.
She knew, she knew where I was.
Yep.
And I couldn't leave.
Yep.
And there were people watching me, checking in on me.
Yeah.
Like that was, she finally was like, oh, I can sleep.
Yeah. Yep.
And now at this point, like, did you like kind of reflect at all, like where you were at, or you were just kind of like going with the,
in the back of my mind, I always had this feeling of like, we shouldn't be doing this. Like I always had that, like the conscience in the back of my head. And of course, the more strung out I get, you know, the less it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and I can eventually just totally push it away. But like I never wanted to continue doing what I was doing, but I was so physically addicted and so strung out, like, you know, watching what I was doing to my, you know, even though through all this horrible addiction, like I still was super close to my parents, super close to my sister, and like I could see them, like what it was doing to them, but I also couldn't stop. So it was very much like a Jekyll and Hyde. Like when I was high, great. When I was strung out, you know, I would like, you know, come out of the room and try and, you know, let my mom know, hey, listen, you know, I used to always tell her, Mom, we're going to stop. Like, you know, like the claim to fame was, we're done. We stopped. Like it was, we clearly weren't going to stop. So
how did you stop?
So January 1st of 2004 was New Year's Day. My brother and I were out at a party one night and came back, and like we had stolen some money from a friend of ours. Sorry.
Comes with the territory.
It does. There was, I mean, I feel like I've been very like PG on that. We stole a lot of stuff. That's how we, you know, that's how
you got to fund the habits.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, like, it goes hand in hand. Now there's not a lot of honest drug addicts that
I was the type that
steal your wallet and then
help you look for it.
I worked.
She worked. I will. Hey, I will give her all the
way to go, Yvette.
She would wake up at like 4 a.m, 2 hours of sleep, go to work, trip over rebar.
No. If I wasn't high, I wasn't going to work. There's no way that I was going to go to work strung out. It wasn't happening because I was useless, and I'd be on the toilet the whole time, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
So that day, my brother and I came home from we came home from the party that morning, and it was like, you know, at that point we didn't have cars. You know, like we had, my parents had taken them from us, and we used to always manipulate my mom and say, "Listen, mom, we decided to go to AA meetings," and that was like. She was all excited about that. We weren't.
You knew what to say.
Yeah, exactly. I
knew
I knew how to get the keys to my mom's car. That was like, and I was always the one that had to do it because my brother's a dumbass. So, he just whatever. So, but we, so it's.
Did you actually go to that AA meeting that day?
No.
Okay.
Never.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you popped in quick and left or something.
We were forced into AA when I was like 17. My mom did like a at home detox where like we got a bunch of clonidine and like we went to the doctor, and prescribed all this different stuff to help us with whatever it was. And
So let me ask how that happened. So, okay, because usually it's like intervention, something like that. Like, yes, I'll go, and you go to rehab or you go to detox. Then they send you to a rehab. That's like the normal thing I think most people are familiar with. At home detox going. So you went to your like pediatrician probably because you're like 17.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so we had gotten, when I got sober finally, I had 2 court cases pending. We robbed our neighbor's house for like, I'd come into your house and I'd steal things that you wouldn't really notice. You know what I mean? Like back when there was DVD, well, there's still DVDs now, but like you could take like, 10, 15 DVDs from someone's house and the pawn shops are going to give you, $4 to $5 a piece. It's enough to get by for that day, whatever. So we stole a bunch of stuff from our neighbor. And neighbor called the cops. So we got caught for that. And then there's another one that we did that we sold a bunch of stuff from. And at that point it was like, we were starting to get arrested for it. So it was like, walls kind of came crashing in. We're going to try the at-home detox. We're going to go to meetings. I started going into NA meetings and, but I never had no intention of stopping. Like that was, because when my brother and I were together, we wouldn't even have to look at each other. Like we would literally wake up in the morning and we'd lock eyes and it was like, all right, he's thinking, how am I getting the keys from mom? Where are we getting money from? What are we stealing? And so it's like the progression all day long of trying to figure out. And like, once we got drugs, we would come home and we would like, we weren't out partying all night. Like we would sit in the house and, but so, that ends up, at home detox, it just was never going to work. So, and before I forget, the last 6 months we started smoking crack, which if you ever smoked crack, that's a wrap. So we're smoking crack, we're shooting heroin. It was just an absolute shit show.
That's the speedball. That's
like you're up, you're down. Speedball, and it was like, smoke crack for a couple hours, shoot the heroin to come back down, at 17, 18 years old.
That is young for that.
Yep.
Like I was still in that pill phase.
Yeah.
At that age. Like that's when I was like starting to catch a habit in pills. And I kind of hit that like peak in like my early 20s.
Yep.
Well, like you said, it's like with everything for you, it's just like everything's in excess,
Yeah.
Right. You're so like, I'm kind of like that. You. Like, yeah, I cracked that door open a little bit. I got to run right through it.
Yep.
But yeah, that's young. That's young. So the at-home detox didn't really work. So what was the next step towards like recovery? How did that happen?
January 1st, 2004, we get home and, we are, we're like, we couldn't figure out how we were going to get the car. And we had stolen my father's chainsaws. And if anyone knows my father, like my father's 7 years old, dude's an absolute beast. Splits wood every day. Just I don't even know why he does anymore. I tell him all the time, Dad, just turn the fucking heat on. Like, but no, he's got to save money that way. So he's been doing it. He's they have a wood stove in their basement. Been heating the house the whole way. His entire adult life. So we'd sold the chainsaws, which like he's had forever. So and when we're walking in, when we got caught for that, and my brother, like I could see in my brother's eyes, because my brother, which. I love him for this. He always took the fall. Like every time we'd get in trouble, it was like he'd take the rat, he'd take the heat, and I'd just be like, Mike, I can't believe you're using heroin. Like you're so bad. Dude, I'm very manipulative. And like at that moment, he kind of gave me the look like, dude, it's your turn.
Yep.
Like I've been doing this for many years now, and my father grabbed me by the throat because we had said I told him that we like let a friend borrow the chainsaws, and he knew that that we sold them, and finally it was like they're at a pawn shop, we're gonna get them back, and my father grabbed me by the throat and punched me in the side of the head. My father never raised a hand at me my entire life, never. My mom didn't either, and choked me and said, "You're not my son." So which. And then
at that point, he
oh my God,
that was like his like little bit of mental detaching from the pain. It's
for sure.
It's like almost a survival instinct of like, I don't know you anymore. You like in his head, it's not like you're not my son. It's this person that you've become is not my son.
No, it was I feel like my father, like the wool was always kind of pulled over my father's eyes, because my father's very much like, when he makes up his mind, don't even try and change it, because it's not going to happen. It's like very cut and dry. So like if he knew the extent of what was going on, I think, you know, shit would hit the fan at like maybe 17 or 18 as opposed to 19. So at that point, my parents threw us out of the house, and my brother and I went back in the woods, and we're like, all right, well, we're going to go near our fort when we were kids, and we're going to make a fire, and we're going to figure this out. You know, we're like running over the ideas. All right, well, we can't get to Waterbury. We had like $40 on us, which was enough to get high that day, or, you know, not be sick. And we sat there for like 2 hours, and finally I was like, dude, I'm going to go get sober. And he was like, what does that even mean? I'm like, I don't actually know, but I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm, you know, 125 pounds, completely strung out. Like, you know, I mean, I'm, you know, literally skin and bone. And I knew, so my aunt, she was like a drug and alcohol counselor. You know, I called her and was like, listen, I need to go to treatment. Now, never been to detox, never been to rehab. I know they're not gonna take me inpatient, because they want to do the outpatient. You know, they really want to have you get in the system and all that. So I had heard, if you go to the hospital and tell them that you're gonna kill yourself, they won't let you leave. So I came up with this crazy story and literally walked into every hospital and was like, I'm gonna kill myself. My dad has a cabinet full of guns, and if you let me leave here, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna blow my brains out. So they were like, you know, you're not going anywhere. Put me in the Danbury Hospital psych ward, which is a fucking experience, that in itself. I was there for 24 hours, and then from there I went to Bridgeport Mental Health for detox, which was, you know, like I didn't do like the fancy, like, you know, insurance route.
That's what I did, and it wasn't
work.
It didn't. I mean,
you weren't ready.
Can't say it. It was nothing wrong with it.
Yeah,
it wasn't. It just didn't do it for me. I wasn't ready. Mm-hmm. Then I went to state run. It was technically a homeless shelter / outpatient that people then been like red flag that can't go to detoxes like or treatments through the state, and that's where I got clean.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
and it was like, you know, I mean, I like, you know, getting there to detox, you know, like it's like, I mean, it's a locked ward, you know, like there was a smoking room with like the lighter on the wall, and you know, like there was first, you know, like active members of gangs were in there, and like, you know, the little white kid from Southbury, which, you know, it was very much it was a shock for me, in which I was there for 16 days, because they call it a 15-day paper, that when you say that you're going to kill yourself, they like make sure you're not going to kill yourself. And I was in there for like maybe 7 or 8 days, and the director, you know, sat down with me, and he's like, are you suicidal? And I was like, no, not at all. I actually like, I was a bad heroin addict, and I couldn't stop. And I knew that if they let me go, like I was never going to stop. And so I did that for, like I said, 16 days. And I went to CVH, Merritt Hall, was there for 46 days. You know, same kind of thing with the, you know, the gang members and all that. You know, but I just, like, it wasn't really taking, you know, like I always had this thought in the back of my mind, like I know I can drink, and I can, like, I just need to stop using heroin. If I stop using heroin, everything's going to be fine. And my brother had gone into treatment right around the exact same time that I went in, but he got out like 2 weeks before me. Now, this is at my 44th day. I talked to him on the phone that night, and I could hear it in his voice that he was already high. And I'm like, if I go home, I know I'm going to get high. This is that like divine intervention, which I've had a few of them since, you know, actually a good amount of them since I've been sober. But just something came over me that was like, all right, if I go home, I'm going to get high. I went to my counselor the next day. I was like, listen, I want to go to a sober house. I didn't even know what a sober house was, but I had heard people in the treatment were all excited about going to sober houses. So it was like, he's like, I can't get you into one when you're supposed to leave. You're probably going to have to stay here an extra day or two. And so they got me into a sober house at the Serenity House in Westbrook. And I called my mom like the night before she was supposed to pick me up. And then I'm like, don't come get me in the morning. I'm going to a sober house. And she's like, what the fuck is a sober house? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going there. It's in Westbrook. She's like, where the fuck's Westbrook? I don't know, but I'm going there. And I got down there end of February of 2004. And the day after I got out of treatment, I was like working, doing tree work because I didn't have a job. I mean, I had no job. So I was doing tree work, and everybody on the crew was sniffing oxys. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, but like I saw it in the morning, and I'm like, I'm not doing this. Like I just got a treatment. I'm good. And it just ate at me the entire work day. And finally at the end of the day, I was like, all right, they were doing more. And so I ended up doing it. And I went back to sober house, and I'm ripped. So I think I ended up throwing up in the bathroom.
Right, because your tolerance is nothing.
Horrible. So, at that moment, I was like, I just need to go to bed. I'm not telling a soul about this. I will take this to the grave with me. I just need to go to bed, which I did. Woke up, luckily didn't get the obsession and the compulsion back. From that moment, it was, and I did have another relapse, which is why my date's May 1st. It was like the end of April, and I had gotten drunk with some some friends from home. And it was one of those things where like, alcohol is never a big issue for me. So I always thought that I could drink. But my turning point was, and I'll try and keep the story brief, is my sister and I were going to go on a cruise. So that right around when I was supposed to have my first year, had I not lied about my sobriety date, my sister and I were going to go on a cruise to Cancun and all those other places. Like the cruise was booked. My sister was diagnosed with cancer when she was 21. So I was, 16. And with thyroid cancer, got her thyroid taken out, in remission, all that. And then a month before we're supposed to go on the cruise, she goes in for one of her annual checkups, and they find a spot behind her heart. So, she's supposed to go in for open heart surgery like a week before the trip. Now the trip gets canceled. Now, backstory is I was planning on drinking on the trip. Like that was, I was gonna go back to the sober house. Everything be fine. I convinced my sister that I can drink everything. Like it's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. So now we go in, cancel the trip, go in for the open heart surgery. They do a biopsy beforehand. It comes back benign. So it's no cancer, no trip, no drinking. And I just, another one of those like burning bush moments where it was like, all right, maybe I should actually like give this a shot, and like, maybe I should actually try and stay sober. And it was one of those, like, from that moment on, we had to go to meetings, we had to go to 5 meetings a week, living in the sober house. But I was 19. You weren't going to tell me anything I didn't already know. Like I thought I knew everything. Let me just ride the sober house out, get done with that, go back, move back in with my parents. And at that time, about a month after I moved down to the sober house, my brother had crashed and burned again, moved to a sober house in Madison. So we were like, 15 minutes from each other. We kind of kept our distance in the beginning, but like we've always been such good friends. We've always done everything together. So it like, if you look at the statistics, one of us should have never stayed sober, let alone both of us.
Died.
Exactly.
One of you could have easily died.
Mm-hmm.
Never gotten clean, been in prison for life, possibly, or died. 100%.
I got sober, when I got sober, I had court cases pending, ended up picking up 2 felonies for burglaries. So, I had 5 years probation with 10 years suspended. So, that was kind of like all right, I should probably try and do good because I don't want to go to jail for 10 years. Like after that, that first year, I like really, I'd gotten like an actual sponsor. I was doing NA in the beginning. I switched over to AA, and I like really, started like going to meetings and, taking the suggestions, big thing for me is I've always had that little bit of willingness, like, all right, I need to do this to get by. And now I'm coming up on 17 years. My brother's coming up on 16 years. Like,
that's amazing.
It's wild to see, but, I've completely I've grown up in the rooms of AA. Getting sober at 19, like I've never had a legal drink. I've never, I never drank in a bar. I couldn't drink in a bar.
You're not missing a whole lot.
That's what they say.
I have.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yep.
You wake up in the morning, you don't feel great.
Yep.
You're not missing out.
Absolutely. But I just feel like I jumped in feet first, after that, not going on the cruise. It was like, all right, go to meetings, start working on yourself. And like, I really realized that I'm a selfish, self-centered prick. Like that's who I am. You know, I mean, like I might, like I try and do a lot, and I help people as much as I possibly can, but I'm very self-seeking, and I'm aware of it now, and I know how to, not be as bad with it, but I'm so used to like getting what I want out of a situation, and I've like really had to dig deep over the last couple of years to like I'll catch myself when I'm doing it now, where before I just thought that's just how I am. So I'm like I said, I've been sober almost 17 years now. I have a phenomenal wife that I somehow convinced to marry me. I don't even, and I'm sure she might regret it from time to time, but we've been married we're coming up on 9 years married, been together for 12 years, living in Niantic now. I have my own business, Sarah Building Remodeling. And we have three.
Father.
Yeah. We have three beautiful children. My daughter's almost 5, and we have 19-month-old twins, which are insane.
Like you said, when you do things, you do them in excess.
Everything.
Even twins.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And then like even, meeting my wife we met, I was like 23 or 24 when we met, and she's normal. Well, she's not an alcoholic, I should say. It's like, I can remember, like I feel like you meet girls and all that, and I'm always like, I'm sober, like waiting for them to be like, oh, fuck this dude. Like, I don't want to be with you. Like, you don't drink. And it's like, I can remember the first date that we had, she ordered like a chocolate martini, and I didn't even know what that was. Because I took her to Michael Jordan's steakhouse, because I don't do anything in moderation.
Ballin'.
Absolutely. I think I put it on a credit card because I didn't actually have any money, but and I like, having that like first heart to heart with her, and like I saying, I'm sober, I'm a recovering heroin addict, all this stuff, and like did no judgment at all. It was so wild to see, and like, she's like, my biggest fan, my biggest supporter, probably the only person on this planet aside from my mom that can kind of keep me in check. Because I'm like self-will run riot, because I have bad ADHD, and like I get fixated on something and it's a fucking wrap. Like I'm looking it up online, I'm like researching everything, I'm gonna buy it, I'm going on this trip, that trip, and she's can always like right size me. I might fight her on it from time to time, or all the time. The relationship it's evolved so much over the years, because now we have all these kids, and
3 kids will evolve a relationship already.
They really do. But like, like it's so, I think like the part that I love the most is like, like I'm there every night, to put the kids to bed, and like I spend a ton of time. Well, I mean, I also do work a lot. But like, I'm putting the kids to bed every night with her, and like, we do everything, we try and do all those routines together. I the relationships that I've made in this program since getting sober, there's like 7 or 8 of us guys that are, like like those friends growing up that I really never had, like never felt like I fit in. Like these dudes are like we all, we like save each other's lives every day and don't even realize it. We go on, we do a golf trip every year. My best friend Will and I, we go on a surfing trip to Puerto Rico and stuff, like without the wives and kids, which I still don't know why they've ever agreed to it, but they do. So we're just going to keep riding it out.
And that's, I think, a misconception is like, oh, you get sober, you get clean, your life is boring.
Super boring.
You don't get to do stuff. And like, dude, you go surfing, you go golfing, you got 3 amazing kids.
You're
you got
able
an
to
awesome
be
wife.
present.
You have your own business. Like you have great relationships. Like you go and do things in your places and you're meeting people. Like you do. What's boring is sitting in a room by yourself doing drugs.
Or drinking.
Like that's what's boring.
So right around a month ago, which, I've been sober for, I think a considerable amount of time. I had a moment where, kid that was working for me, he's been struggling with heroin for a while, and I didn't really know as much as, what was really going on. And we went to a job, and he was like, I could see it in his eyes. He was visibly messed up. And I started getting that pit in my stomach, which I haven't had that pit in my stomach in many years. And I know what that pit is. And it wasn't even that I really wanted to get high. It was just all the old feelings flooded in really quickly. And this is, like I said, this is like a month ago. And, I quickly, I got him to leave for the day, kind of gave him an ultimatum, basically saying, listen, you're either going to treatment, going to a sober house, or I'm firing you. Oh, and by the way, I'm calling your parents and telling him because I know his parents. He agreed, to go to a sober house, which was good. But it kind of, at that moment, at coming up on 17 years, I realized I've really been like resting on my past laurels. Like I'm not, I've been doing, since COVID hit, I can't even use COVID because I've been doing one meeting a week for like the last 6-7 years. And, just kind of coasting on the last 10 years prior to that, or the last 14, 15 years. And it scared the shit out of me to think like, and I mean, I know it's never going to go away. Like that's cemented in my mind. One thing about my sobriety is it's life or death. I know it's life or death. That's how I've been treating it since after, about a year in, after the cruise debacle. But like, it's always been so much. If I stop going to meetings, I know I'm going to end up dead. There's no like, I'll convince myself to drink. I'll convince myself to use drugs, and I'm going to end up dead. And I've worked my ass off, and for that to not happen. So at that moment, it was like, all right, I need to pick up my meetings. Like the good thing about being sober for a while is I know, like if shit hits the fan, I know what to do. I have a awesome sponsor, great network of guys, and I feel like I've kind of used all that the past 10, 15 years of, the fellowship I have is great, but realistically sitting in meetings that's where it all happens. Like that for me, if I'm not going to meetings, it's just a matter of time. I hear people all the time that are like, I don't go to meetings anymore. Why the fuck would you ever try that? Like that to me is insanity. I've always gone to meetings. I've always done at least one meeting a week. And, there's all the haters that say, one turns into none turns into drunk, or that's not the saying, but whatever. And it was, with me, the pride and ego is huge in me. So, and to think, that I was getting to a point where I was just comfortable going to one meeting a week. And it took literally seeing that, seeing him fucked up on heroin for me to really get that shit scared out of me. I picked up another meeting. I'm doing a step meeting Monday night, big book meeting Friday night, talking to my sponsor 2-3 times a week. I've actually started listening to the big book on tape because like I said before, my reading comprehension is horrible. Like I can read a paragraph and I'm like, I don't know what I just read at all. It's horrible. So I've been listening to the big book on tape. And, like this last month for me, like I feel like I like got sober again. It's been such a profound feeling. And it's another thing I love about AA is like, not that I've ever gotten distant from it, but when I really need it, it's always there. Like there's no judgment. I've been, sharing a lot about it in the meetings, about, resting on my past laurels and like, shit hit the fan and I at least knew what to do and, got back in, into going to more meetings. I mean, I just can't go to meetings every day anymore. It's just not, like I want to see, I want to put my kids to bed at night. I want to spend time with my wife. I want to.
Well, they say that it gives you a life. Like, the idea is that it gives you a life.
Yep.
There's always a balance.
It's like just saying, like, I didn't get sober to sit in church basements every night. It's just not, right. Like in my opinion, if I need to go to a meeting every day, I fucked up. I did. Like at, 16, 17 years, I should have enough, tools to not have to go every day. I mean, and some people do, and that's great. And you get the camaraderie and the fellowship, and that's awesome. But like, I want to live a life in AA and outside, also outside of AA. And, but yeah, it's cool how, how much it has evolved over the years. And, I feel like there's like a million other talking points that I wanted to discuss.
We could always have you on again and touch on other. We could do like a part 2.
Yeah, we're doing that next week. Doug, part 2. But no, I mean, I'm just so grateful. And like, I mean, like you sold me a car and like, like, I mean, we've, like, and whether you know it or not, when I have to get the vehicle serviced, I'm always pumped because I'm like, I know he's going to be there. That motherfucker works all the time. So it's like, I come in there and I don't even care if you like, no, I mean, I feel like the last time I was there, like you were about to sell a car and I was like, whatever, dude, I'm going to sit here and hang out with you. You have to talk to me.
It was great. It was good. It was good. Yep. And I told you about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was, I love it when you come in.
Absolutely.
I had a friend to hang out with.
I know, right? It's, I mean, you have all those other people there at work. So, but yeah, no, I mean, like I said, this is, I was super, super grateful that you asked. I mean, I might've even offered, But, you know.
No, you were actually somebody that I thought of early on
Definitely.
to have. I think I told you, I had mentioned it to you.
Yeah.
Like I had a short list of people and you were definitely on it. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on for sure. It's crazy the similarities that I hear in that. Like that is my progression. That is very, very similar. Even like growing up, you know, hand in hand with my siblings and like just getting into trouble and it progressing. I mean, you progress a little quicker, you know, and a little younger, but it was the same. It was completely the same. I mean, unfortunately, mine led me to prison, and it took me a couple times before I would even go to a sober house. Like, you know, they were like, all right, go to a detox. I'm like, all right, fine. Go to a treatment. No. Go back to detox. Go to a treatment. All right, fine. Go to a sober house. No.
Yep.
Go back to detox. Go to treatment. Okay. Go to a sober house. Okay. It took all that, like no to the next step every single time. But for me, it was a sober house, just like you. Like same thing. A sober house is what did it for me. Like 18 months in a house.
That's what I did.
With strict rules.
18 months.
Yep. With strict rules where I was able to like kind of start to be like a man, like an independent man, pay my bills, like
Got your own apartment?
I got my own apartment.
Got
like
a car.
I became like an adult. Yeah. I had like, you know, camaraderie, saw people just going back out and then getting kicked out. And like, you can like see it on them. Like they're like angry and like pissed off and it's like, it's your fault kind of thing. Like they want to tell, but you can see right through them.
Yep.
And it's like, you could just tell they just regret every second of what they did.
Yep.
And it's like, I don't want that.
No.
I feel good sitting here and being completely clean and having a job and not having to regret anything.
Yeah, I mean, like, even like that first, you know, like 5-6 months, I remember having that feeling where it was like, whoa, like that, like burning bush again. Like I don't have to use heroin anymore. Like that to me was so profound because I had no choice. I had to do it every day. So like, you know, when you get off, you know, I mean, I did the methadone for, you know, 7 or 8 days, but you like start to get that clear head and like, you know, I you know, and I just always had that feeling where like, I don't want to keep doing this. I just couldn't stop. And then I finally stopped and it was like, all right, like, I mean, I need to do a shit ton of work on myself. And I, you know, saw a therapist when I was like 31 years old, 32 years old. And it was like the most profound thing I've ever done for myself. It was like, she knew exactly how to pull everything out. And I went to her because I just had some like, you know, head stuff going on that I couldn't really figure out. And like and I didn't want an AA therapist. Like, you know, AA for me has always been a pretty solid thing. Like I wanted to discuss other stuff. And man, I mean, she had me, I wouldn't say bawling, but like figured out so much stuff that like, I just thought I was like a good kid that did drugs. No, like I'm a drug addict through and through. Like I have the disease of more. I want everything in excess. And, you know, I mean, I saw her for almost a year and it was one of the best things that I think I've ever done for myself. So, and I can thank my wife for that because she was the one that was like, you should go see a therapist. Yeah. I did.
No, we did the same kind of thing. Like for us, for our relationship, like before getting married, like, you know, we could see there's communication things and kind of breakdowns here and there. And like, we knew we both wanted to be together.
And the struggle of like us.
We were both addicts.
Together,
right. We were both in recovery.
Yep.
And it's like, all right, we should probably go talk to a professional.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And something like my mom said, it kind of was profound. It's like when you go and you're going to start driving a car, you're 16, you're 17, you go to driver's ed, then you take your test and drive a car. Mm-hmm. So why would you don't just drive a car, get in an accident, then go to school? Oh. You know, so same thing with like a therapist. Like, shouldn't you probably go and do that? Do some training and practice from like school with a professional before you do it, rather than wait for you to get in that accident.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, so it was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, it helped, you know, individually, couples, whatever. But yeah, therapy is a huge.
Sam and I did, you know, she started, you know, to see a therapist, and then it was, you know, why don't you come along, you know? And I was like, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it was more like a couples thing. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to have that, like the perspective from an outside person. You know, Sam and I get into an argument about something and we're like, you know, it's like, we're so quick to, you know, pick out whatever the other person's not doing. Cause that's just, you know, I think that's how humans argue. But like to hear the moderator say, well, really get down to it. And it's like, we love each other, like we're, I mean, she's, like I said, my best friend, my best advocate. Like she's just always has my back. It's like, she's such an amazing person. And she puts up with me. So that's,
one thing our therapist says is like, you're going to fight, you're going to argue, but as long as you understand, like, that's the only person I want to argue with.
It's like, when I laid my head down at night, like that's who I want next to me. And that's, that's how it's always been. And also one of my twins sleeps in bed with us. It's a nightmare. So, it's been like, the last probably year now, and and last night she was horrible. And it's like, I mean, I really want to get her out of the bed because it'd be nice to like, sleep, not have a child in my bed anymore.
Put your legs straight when you're sleeping.
Exactly. And we have the dogs too, which our dogs are the worst. Oh, they're tiny and annoying.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on.
For sure.
We appreciate it.
It's nice to meet you, Yvette, too. I mean, I've heard so much about you over the last couple of years. I really have.
I mean, likewise. Every time you come over, like he talks about you, and it's always a good thing.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, like, thank you, because listening to your story, it's exactly why I wanted to do this podcast. Yep. And also when you were touching on like the not going to meetings, and it's like, why would you do that? Like, I can totally relate to that, because like I feel like I've been making myself so busy that I have an excuse to not go. And yesterday I was actually picking up, these clothes that from Christina, and she lives really, really close to my ex-dealer's house. And I never really realized it, but as I'm driving, I was like stopping, and I definitely just kind of looked to see, I don't know. I don't know what it was, but like, I just looked over, saw like what car was there, and I kept driving. And like, I didn't have the urge to use or anything, but it was just like, it brought that feeling back. Not a good feeling.
Yep.
So it was just a good reminder that I have to, like, why take a chance? Like, I have to stay connected, and I don't want to ever go back to that.
I mean, I feel like too, like, especially, with the drugs nowadays, I mean, people, there's so much fentanyl in it, you just die. Like, I mean, the amount of people that I feel like my first 10 years, for some weird reason, I like kept count, like, because it was happening all the time. And I stopped counting at 100 people that I had known that had overdosed on heroin in the last, I mean, and it was people that I went, that I knew from home. I had a guy that I sponsored I talked to him on a Friday. He overdosed on a Saturday morning. And it's crazy how fragile it is, and how, 1 minute everything's fine, great. And then that insanity creeps back in, and before you know it, it's like you get the call that they're dead, and it's a shame. It really is. But I mean, there's such an easier, softer way. It's like, go to meetings, ask for help. It doesn't get much easier than that. I mean, and that's why, like, I think I've stayed sober as long as I have, is because I don't really consider myself very smart. Not that I'm not a smart person, but like, I don't complicate it. I go to meetings, I ask for help. I do what I'm supposed to do on a daily basis. I try not to be a selfish, self-centered prick every day. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But here I am.
Thank you so much for being here.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
It'll definitely help a lot of people.
Definitely.
I hope so.
All right, guys. Cool. That is the last episode, actually.
Yeah, this is episode 10 for our season. Yeah.
I brought the house down?
You brought the house down.
Right. I'm super competitive, so I'm excited. Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right, guys. So next episode is going to be just Yvette and I talking about the previous 10 episodes, the whole first season, and a little recap on just kind of how it was for us and what our plans are and hopes are moving forward. One special thing we're going to do is answer questions about any of our guests that you may have. So if you watch the video, you have questions and you want us to answer them, shoot us a message. Follow us on Instagram. The handle is Talking Yourself Off Ledge. Also, you can send us a text, Facebook Messenger, Facebook, however, even a comment in the YouTube video is fine. And we're going to answer some questions. So I hope it adds a little bit to it. All right, thanks.